You know that feeling, right? You ask an AI a simple question, and it comes back with an answer that is so detailed, so confident, and just completely, totally wrong. It's what we call a hallucination, and honestly, it's one of the biggest headaches in AI today. So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and find out why these brilliant systems sometimes just make stuff up.
And I mean, here's a perfect example. A really powerful AI was asked about a top researcher's dissertation, and it spit out this very specific, very impressive sounding answer. The only problem? Literally everything is wrong. The title, the university, the year, all of it. And it wasn't a one-off thing. Other top models made similar, confident blunders.
So that brings us to the big question. What is going on here? This isn't just some simple bug in the code. It's something much deeper, much more systemic. How can these models, trained on pretty much the entire sum of human knowledge, be such convincing liars? Well, the answer is fascinating, and it all starts in two key places. Okay, first up, we have to look at how these models learn to lie to begin with. And it turns out this isn't some bad habit they pick up over time. Nope, it's actually baked right into their digital DNA from the very beginning, during this massive phase called pre-training. Think of pre-training like this. Imagine setting a student loose in a library the size of the internet. Their job isn't to memorize every single fact, but to learn the patterns of language, how words fit together, the flow of a sentence, what sounds plausible. They're learning the statistics of what looks like a real human-written sentence.
And here's where it gets really tricky. For an AI to generate a fact, it first has to be able to judge if a statement is a fact in the first place. But judging is a pretty simple yes or no question. Generating is a creative act. And it turns out that learning to reliably tell the difference between true and false is a way harder statistical problem for an AI to solve.
So during that pre-training phase, the model is basically running millions and millions of these little is it valid tests on its own. It learns to see that a sentence like there are 2 Ds in ladder is valid, and that there are 3 Ls in spell is an error. And for common knowledge, for simple logic, this actually works pretty well.
And boom, that right there is the heart of the problem. If a model's ability to judge is even a little bit shaky, its ability to generate is going to be shaky too. Every single weakness in its internal fact checker leads directly to it creating plausible-sounding nonsense. This is the statistical ground zero for AI hallucinations.
Now, this whole problem gets way worse when you're talking about rare information. Let's say a specific fact, like someone's birthday, only shows up once in that entire giant library of training data. While researchers found that in that case, the model has at least a 20% chance of getting it wrong later. There just isn't enough data for it to form a solid judgment, so it's forced to guess.
But wait, that's only half the story. These errors, they might be born during pre-training, but they're actively encouraged in the second stage, how we test and grade these AIs. And this leads to what the researchers call the test taker's dilemma.
You see, we don't just train these AIs, we are constantly testing them on these huge exams called benchmarks. And just like a student who's desperately trying to ace a test, the AI learns strategies and tricks to get the highest possible score. It's optimized to be a good test taker. So think about how these AI tests are graded. You get 1 point if you're right. You get 0 points for an incorrect guess. And you get the exact same 0 points for honestly saying, I don't know. So what would you do? You'd guess every single time. There's absolutely no penalty for being wrong and 0 reward for admitting you're not sure. And this isn't just some small niche problem. We're talking about the biggest, most important benchmarks in the entire industry. MLU, GPQI, SWE bench, they all use this simple right or wrong grading system. The paper actually calls it an epidemic of penalizing uncertainty. We are, quite literally, teaching our AIs to bluff their way to a good grade. And the result is an AI that has learned a really powerful but really dangerous lesson. Being confident is always better than being cautious. Whenever it hits a gap in its knowledge, the best strategy for getting a high score is to just generate the most plausible-sounding answer it can cook up and, hope for the best. So if the test itself is the problem, well, maybe the test is also the solution. And that brings us to our final section, where the researchers propose a really simple but pretty profound shift in how we grade these artificial intelligence systems. Here's the big insight, the aha moment of the whole thing. Instead of pouring all our energy into trying to build a more honest student, what if we just wrote a better test? What if we just change the rules of the game to reward the kind of behavior we actually want to see?
The solution is actually surprisingly simple. First, you make the grading rules totally transparent. Second, you introduce a penalty for wrong answers, kind of like the old SATs used to do. And third, you make saying "I don't know" a neutral choice. It gets 0 points, which is a whole lot better than the negative score you'd get for a wrong guess.
You can even state these rules right there in the prompt. By making the stakes this clear, you force the AI to switch from being a thoughtless guesser to a calculated risk-taker. It now has to weigh its own confidence against a real penalty, and all of a sudden, saying "I don't know" becomes a smart, strategic decision. So, when you put it all together, the big picture is pretty clear. These AI hallucinations, they're not some mysterious bug. They are a predictable, logical result of statistical learning, and they're reinforced by an evaluation system that accidentally punishes honesty. But the good news is, by simply changing the tests, we can change the incentives and start guiding AIs to be way more trustworthy. And that leaves us with one last, really important question to think about. Maybe the goal shouldn't be to create an AI that knows everything, but to create one that knows the limits of its own knowledge. What if the future of trustworthy AI depends less on building a better brain and more on how we decide to grade it for its honesty?